I've got a few different things. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Yes, no?
Yes.
Screen share, sweet, cool, okay. I put that together just from our recent MDF experiences, and I've got some details about the Microsoft one, but before we dig into that, I wanted to go through a couple of the other vendors we use. So quick overview to make sure we're all sort of level set. MDF is marketing development funds. All vendors have some form of these to use. You can offset them in a lot of different categories. So don't think of it just in traditional marketing like for this thing. One of the nice things is some want a specific ROI, others just want proof you did something. So it's a little bit of sort of navigating the game of how you can do it or work the deal. As several of you guys know, I like to travel a bunch and like to work the deal with getting like an upgrade on an airline flight or anything else like that. Basically, same principle. Let's apply it to something else here. So that being said, a couple core requirements. So making sure you have measurable revenue. That's an important thing to start with. A lot of times you might need to be at a specific tier. So Jay mentioned Datto as an example. We're a Datto partner. I know a couple other people on the call are as well. Because we're a blue partner, which is their top tier, they typically have a little bit much of a larger MDF pool that's available than say if you were at a lower tier in the Datto world. Be able to make a good business case, just articulate what you're doing, why you're doing it. Have a good relationship with whomever is at the partner organization, so that helps move it forward. And then one of the other things is some require advance permission. Two of the ones I know that for sure do not are StartAStar and Microsoft. And Microsoft specifically will still, I believe, until the 15th of February, allow you to apply to use up credit you may have from July to December of 2020. So everybody on this call, you may have some marketing co-op funds that Microsoft has reserved for you that you may not have used. So there's a specific call to action related to this that you may be able to take advantage of. I just went through the couple vendors we've hit up recently. So the first one we did is Lenovo. They are discretionary. Our scenario there is we had to lower our hardware margin when we sold, I think it was a couple hundred laptops over the course of some amount of time. So we went ahead and we weren't going to get that hardware margin back, but they gave us about 10K of MDF, and we just used that to buy everybody dual 27-inch monitors and a bunch of other miscellaneous hardware. So it was money we would have spent for Fusiontek expenses, but it all sort of pooled out in the same way. So different way to get some money on the table, and it was a nice thing. Everybody walked in one day, and we just have a ton of 27-inch monitors sitting around for everybody. So that was one example. Next one is Sonicwall. It's discretionary as well. Ask for whatever you can. We've used it specifically to facilitate some training expenses. We used it for Google AdWords. And then one of our go-to-markets this year, we're targeting law firms as well. And so we're getting them to pay part of the Legal Administrator Association of Legal Administrators. There's a chapter in a couple different markets we serve. And so we're getting them to pay part of those yearly fees. And so we're developing that as a business case.
Are there any strings attached to that, Brian? Do you have to?
You have to explain sort of what your revenue is. In this case, you fill out a document, you give them some supporting documentation, and then they'll come back and say yay or nay. Sonicwall is nice that their quarters are offset. So the end of their calendar year is in the end of January. So they have money to burn right now.
But it doesn't say like you got to use the Google AdWords or your participation in the association to sell Sonicwall specifically?
You would have to make that business case. So what we did is we went through everybody who we used that for, and we said, hey, here's all the Sonicwall devices we sold to people who came in through Google AdWords or through, the Association of Legal Administrator people last year. And so we said, hey, here's the dollar value of what that looks like for you.
What's just from this one in particular, you remember the total amount? Because that's not an insignificant amount of money to me.
I think that's like 12K is the number that jumps into my mind.
Yeah.
So that's some decent coin. It's nothing, nothing terrible. That's for sure. Next one we had is StartAStar. So we sell two VoIP solutions. One is StartAStar. The other is Microsoft. And it basically depends on the sophistication of the client. So very much call center, non-sophisticated people get StartAStar, full information workers, if you will, get a Teams VoIP solution. StartAStar will basically reserve a percentage of the top line co-op dollars. So if you've ever transacted anything with StartAStar, chances are you may have marketing funds which are available, and you can call them up. And we went ahead and said, hey, We want to, we partnered with them for some webinars and they give us money for gift cards. And then at the end of the year, we found out what the balance was and we just submitted a request to get paid out on Google AdWords for it. So we were like, hey, that's easy, low-hanging fruit. Let's just get our money back on it. So that was our go-to market with StartAStar. Datto, discretionary, whatever you can get. For them, we did the webinar and we did 50% of the Association of Legal Administrators yearly membership fee. So the other part of that chapter thing. Basically, a lot of vendors will go and say, we'll go half and then you have to go half. Well, our solution is we'll just get two vendors to do 50% a piece and that gets us to the same solution. So
was their webinar any good? I mean, did you get a lot of attendance?
The Datto webinar, they have good content. We had good calls to action and we had good upsells that we were able to do there. The lesson we learned on the first one of these is we gave away the $25 gift cards and we didn't pre-qual the list. And so somebody got a hold of our marketing materials and we had a bunch of like rando Gmail address people who showed up. And then they started pestering our marketing person saying, Brian specifically invited me and you need to give me a $25 gift card. And we went to get their business info. And so it's like a total scammy situation. But we had like people all over the country who randomly got onto our webinar thing. So a little disappointing. But that just taught us we had to high grade the org and target it when we give out gift cards for webinars when it's like a pay to play thing.
When you got the successive Datto webinars, like how many attendees did you get? Like throw away the first?
Those ones we got up to, I want to say it's like 40 or 50.
That's what I thought. That's kind of what I would call out here.
Half the people on there were just these crap people who were just fishing for a free lunch. So I wouldn't lend that any credence. I'd tell you that the meat and the quality of people, I'd tell you 20 people's good, but quite frankly, at this point, the thing I love the most is sort of similar to what Ivan was saying with some of the white page stuff. If you go to our website, we've got like all the webinars we did last year. And so it's like there's this really solid book of business associated with those. And then we'll send out links. So we did like one with Section 179 financing and one with the people at Great America and the people at Datto and Competency Group. So now we've got content that we can email out to people. Our next step is making like blog posts and some other stuff about that. But at least we've got webinar content we can work with. So.
And Brian,
these
are prospects, not clients, right?
Sorry. Yeah, so both clients and prospects. I was saying clients in that aspect because one of them we were doing more upselling, but it's either if they're net new prospects, we'll send them stuff, or if there's an existing client, that's the reason we did like the Section 179 one or the Competency Group, because we wanted to target something where it was an upsell opportunity, and then when it comes, we just link back to the webinar. So it's a little of both in that case, both upsell and then net new.
I'm sorry for being obtuse. Like on your Datto webinar that you're referring to.
Yeah.
Like, what are you suggesting that I would have a Datto webinar and I would invite prospects and clients, even though all of our clients already have a Datto?
So what's the totality? So it depends on the Datto services you have sold them. So for example, we had co-managed clients who don't have a Datto BCDR or are Backupify for SaaS. And so we wanted to have somebody else come and speak to those for people who we had engaged and we were selling some other service. Like maybe we did a Microsoft Teams deployment for them, but we hadn't sold them BCDR. And then this was the cross-sell for the BCDR solution. Okay.
But your clients that already had Backupify and a Datto on site, they were not invited to this webinar.
So two things we did in that. They were not specifically targeted, but some of them still showed up. And I'll tell you what happened. It was really interesting. The first thing we did is at the beginning of last year, we flipped over to Crosswave, which is a standardized signature tool that we use for everybody. Jay told me about it a couple years back. They're a New Zealand company. There's 3 or 4 different companies that I think do it that I'm aware of. But Crosswave works well for us, and we've used it as a selling opportunity. But for us, it did 2 things. One is it standardized everybody's signature here, so there was no choose your own adventure in Signature Town. The second thing is we inject billboard advertising, if you will, into the bottom of the signatures. So whenever we're promoting a webinar or something else, you'll see different text. So if you look at the email I sent out reminding everybody to fill out the spreadsheet document, there's some sort of narrative at the bottom about some recent webinars we did. That's just the link that goes out. And then, we've got a webinar. I think we're doing a Competency Group one again in a few weeks. So ideally in the next few days, we'll change that up and that'll be the new promo. And so what we found is that some of our existing clients got those links and they came to the webinar and that was totally fine. And we sent them the $25 gift card or whatever. And so they got lunch on us. And then part of it is they would just ping us and be like, hey, Brian, just wanted to double check. are we covered with everything you covered in the webinar? And we could either go back to them and say, yep, you totally are, no need to worry, but it drove home the security consciousness point of view. Or, yeah, there's a gap and let's talk about what that is. So there was good dialogue and sort of reinforcement either way. And it's good just sort of, instead of me talking, pulling in some other industry expert in those categories. So, but that's the story there across the board. Rich and Michael, does that answer your questions you both had? Cool. And then Michael, yes?
Yes.
Sweet. Okay, good. So next one, Microsoft. So Microsoft's where it gets a little more murky. There are two components to this. One is it's a percentage of top line sales in your CSP transactional work is reserved as MDF funds. And then the second is they're going to pay you cash. So we took the cash and then we ran the rest against Google AdWords. If you are not getting money from Microsoft on a monthly basis, I have a couple of screenshots here I'm going to walk you through. I am happy to spend a few minutes doing a screen share with anybody individually to try and go through or help you with this. Some CSP direct resellers, so Tech Data, Ingram, Pax8, Synix, etc., know a lot about this. Other ones don't. There's also two things I want to point out that are really important. One is Jay made a really good comment that Microsoft's messaging has always been that they don't necessarily want you to make money on the CSP solution directly, but on the service you're wrapping with it. So for example, Jay's company does a lot of application programming development, and that's what they wrap with it. That's becoming more apparent for anybody who reads the r/MSP Reddit thread. You'll see a couple comments in the past week or two about Microsoft direct emailing your clients, even if it's 100% CSP, to try and fish and pull deals that way. There's some murkiness, and I don't think I saw any resolution, at least when I looked this morning, if exactly what was or wasn't going on there. But it's probably something that long-term Microsoft's going to look to clamp down on. So this opportunity will not, at least in this form, last forever, and I think that's something we all need to be aware of. But while there's money on the table, you may as well take it. So those are the two quick notes on that. What I would suggest you do, this is the little chart I put in here. So basically the short version of it is, if you look at it, so if you take something like Office 365, and so if we'll go down here and we'll say core modern work is where O365 is, so it's 4%. So they'll take 4% of whatever your top line CSP revenue is in that category. They will give you 60% of that as cash and 40% of those as a co-op rebate. If you look down here to some other stuff, they will give you different amounts of money. So if you look at like M365 E3, E5, M365 Business Premium, it's a little bit of a bump at 5%. If you look at things like if you transition to Microsoft for their calling plan, instead of using, say, Call Tower or another third-party solution, they'll kick you 20% on that. So there's different amounts for different things. And then there's obviously core Azure consumption versus if you're using RI or reserved instance. There's different balances on that. So there's a lot of numbers on here. And quite frankly, my attitude is sort of, I just want to make sure our MPN ID and all that is linked to as much of it as possible. There's no possible way I'm going to audit this, because if you export the spreadsheet, it's like 8 cents here and 32 cents there and $5 over there. And it's just, you just got to sort of gamble that when you're pulling your hands across the table, you're grabbing all the chips that are left. So that's at least my take on it. If somebody wanted to audit it, I guess they could. The specific
just so I know, is this like automatic?
There's like money that showed up in our bank account the other week. You have to manually submit for the co-op, and I'll tell you about that. But the cash rebate thing, we just get, it wires in on the 11th of every month. So a couple of grand dropped into our bank account last week.
And so maybe this is just for my benefit too. So what the advice to the group is, just make sure that you're set up, or you're set up.
Yeah, so I've got a couple screenshots here in the next couple slides, Michael.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. The other key things, the requirements are on the side over here. The biggest things are you have to have an active silver or gold membership competency. So if most MSPs will have that, but on the off chance you don't, that's the first thing you need to have. Super low hanging fruit. It is the same payout if you are a silver or a gold competency partner, but it's, you pay, I think it's like 16 or 1800 bucks versus $4 grand. So if you don't have one, just get the silver. You don't need to spend money getting the gold. just so we're all on the same page. You need to sign their agreement, and you have to give them tax and banking info. So first thing is, and everybody can do this on another screen while we're going through the process, go to partner.microsoft.com. It'll redirect to the English one, and you should be able to log in with your Office 365 creds. And I'm going to go through the steps sort of quick, but if people want me to pause because they're trying to do it the same, so I can just like raise your hand and I'll go a little slower. But the first thing we would do is we would go there. The screen shows up here on the left-hand side, and you will choose competencies, and you can very easily see what competencies you have. So you'll see that we qualify under cloud platform, cloud productivity, and small and mid-market. They're all marked as complete here, and the gold ones are in progress. So as long as it marks as complete, you're good to go. If not, you need to go through the steps to get yourself checked out in the competency, and you'll have to associate the appropriate revenue and some other stuff, and you can go into that. We can go into that if we need to. The next one, and this is the step that when Chad and I were on the phone last week, is one of the ones I told him was super important because it was disabled originally when we got into the portal, even so that I couldn't see my own information. And I don't know why it's set up that way, but this is the one you got to be super careful about. In the upper right corner, you go to Account Settings, and then under Account Settings, you go to User Management, and you scroll all the way to the bottom of a particular user, so we'd choose somebody's name, and there's two checkboxes here. One that says Manage Your Organization's Incentives, and then one that says Manage Your Organization's, one or more locations, and then one or more offers. And you basically want to check both the boxes. So you want to allow yourself the permission to view the incentives. Because if you don't, you can't see anything. Who knows why it's turned off by default, but it is. You have to hit update, you log back in, occasionally have to wait a few hours for it to sort of replicate through. In my case, I also added our marketing person who was putting incentive requests in so that she could submit the requests. Once you do that, on the same page, there's space to put your payout and tax profile info. Basically, you have to have an active checking account number they can wire money into, and you have to give them W-9, I think. You have to update some document because basically Microsoft's going to tell the IRS how much money they paid you. So simple, straightforward, easy to do, but those two things, it'll air out. And keep in mind, a lot of times the money will be amassing for you. They just won't release the funds until you have these documents in here. So it's entirely possible when you log in here, there's a bunch of money queued up if you haven't sort of set up the plumbing, and that just hasn't been released or piped out to you yet. The next thing that you want to do is on the left-hand side, you want to make sure under customers, you have all of your customers listed. And so I just screenshotted the first part of this. Now here's what's super interesting. Of these 4 customers, the people at One Alliance and the people at Americans for Responsible Solutions are no longer people we actually do business with. Just their current MSP didn't pull us off the tenant. So we occasionally still get kickback or residuals because we're technically listed as a Microsoft partner. So just list yourself for everything, and then money shows up, it shows up. So that's sort of the process there. If your customers don't show up, easiest way to fix that is you want to contact whoever your CSP vendor is, because they have a very customized link that you need to log into with the global admin account for each of the end user tenants, which basically not only there's the CSP linkage, and then there's this one right here, which basically says you can be a partner of record. And depending on how it's set up, it's a little different per client, per CSP direct disty. So I would check with whoever they are to make sure you have it set up. But short version, you want to see your customers here. As a side note, what we do, and people can do whatever they want here, is because all our customers are listed here, we can have our service desk people log into this portal. All they see is the customer list, and they can manage settings for individual clients or individual tenants. So that way we have a very clear audit trail that if a license got reassigned or a password got reset or whatever occurred, we know that XYZ technician logged in, not it was the generic creds which we store in IT Glue, which people log in. So we get a better and a clear audit trail on that path, and you can do that by doing through the admin center in here. Any questions anybody's got so far?
Yeah, so Brian, we use Pax8.
Yes.
Who do you use?
We use Tech Data.
Okay.
So, yeah. And Chad and I were talking about Pax8 last week, and the one comment I will tell you is I have heard in passing, and I have not talked to Pax8 in detail, but I have heard in passing because of how they're set up that they're actually a sub-agent of Arrow, that they may not pipe through as many of these rebates to everybody because they claw back some of them to cover their costs and their profit margin. I do not know if that is true or if that is just the industry gossip and rumor mill. But if you see numbers that are different than this, Rich, that would be something to be aware of as far as what your totals look like. So
I do know they're a sub-agent of Arrow, that's for sure.
so I don't know the other part. I've just heard in passing. So just reference and data point there.
Okay.
Once you've made sure that any other questions before I keep going?
Other than, are you willing to share this PowerPoint?
That was mine too.
I can consolidate this down in email. That's fine. Or I'll put it up on the team site. Anybody can look for it up there. And you can put our
awesome. Thank you.
number on anything if you want to just send us the credit. So that's cool too. Next step is you on the left-hand side, you want to go to incentives and you'll click on overview and you'll see a bunch of lines like this. I just screenshot the first two for the purposes of this. But the key things you care about, if it says program discontinued, it isn't happening right now, so you don't worry about it. But let's see this like CSP indirect reseller deal right here. You want to make sure it says enrolled. It'll have a little yellow flag if it's looking for like the tax or the banking stuff, because a lot of times you just need to click on it and say, use my default checking account and my default tax info, and then it'll queue it up to process the money and everything else. Okay. So that's simple, straightforward. You click on the overview button. Then the next thing, and this is like the last part, is for this co-op management. So if we go back one slide, you'll see co-op management's a little further down on the same tab. The first thing you want to do is if you go to aka.ms/incentive support, it's a faster way of going to the page. There's a little, they just changed it. It used to be an email address, but there's like a drop-down chat thing where you can choose it and you basically want to look for your incentive balance. You can also export it from an Excel document, but it's more of a hassle, so it's easier to go this way. It used to be you can email them, and I think if you go through this, it's one of those wizards that if it errors out, it'll let you send an email and you say, hey, here's my partner ID. I need to know the balance. And then when you go and do that, you can come back and you hit this create a claim button, and you basically follow the bouncing ball. And so, for example, we just said, hey, we found out that we had like $6,600, and we just found out that we may have a little bit more, so we'll probably submit another one. And we just submitted $6,600 worth of Google AdWords receipts, and they wired us the money. So that's the deal. But the nice thing here is that any of your transacting for revenue between July and December of 2020, it used to be that you had to have the request in, no, hang on, I'm going to get this correct. I may be off by half a year. So what I think it may actually be is if you transacted January to June, normally you have to use the money in the following 6-month period. They released an update recently which said that they would, I believe, accept requests for that money through February 15th. So at the moment, even if you have money from January to June, you should be able to submit a request for that. And then in addition to that, you have money from July to December, which you can use in the future. So for example, I know we've got at least, I think it's like $7 or $8 grand, and it might be more for our July to December period, which we can use in the first half of this year. So does that sort of give everybody a base picture? Is there any other question I can answer for people right there?
Yeah, Brian, so like, have you ever had any explanation for how variable is that monthly deposit? Like, I feel like ours used to be more and now it's less than what it was. Is it because the plan changes, or, I mean, I know we didn't like lose some significant amount of 365, like, you know, accounts that we took off the plan, like, or do you get paid more at the beginning and less at the second, you know, that kind of thing?
100% they changed the payoff amounts. And what they did, Doug, is on this one right here is the biggest thing. It used to be, I think it was like 10% across the board for Azure and for base of 365 licenses. And so what they did is they cut it in more than half, and then they took that number and they cut it in approximately half what you got as cash. So it's like 25% of the cash you would have gotten maybe 2 years ago.
Okay, so the plan has gotten worse than what it used to be.
Correct. And what they're doing is they're driving very significant drivers. So they want to drive on things, and they've got like a 20-page document or a guide. I just couldn't find it in short version. But what they're really doing, if you look at this, is they want you to sell Teams dial plan. They want you to sell reserve instance, i.e. a contractual Azure subscription. And they want you to sell some of their upcharge security and like dynamic CRM and those sorts of things. That's really what the push is. So And that's where I said it's like, it isn't as good as it necessarily was, or it's better if you're transacting more, but it's, it's money. It's something. Covers the cost of this, webinar. So.
Mhm.
So, any other questions anybody's got? Cool. Well, I guess that's
Thanks for
all.
sharing.
Yeah, for sure. I will save the PowerPoint to the Teams folder. But if anybody else has got a question or wants to do a quick one-on-one thing, happy to walk through it with anybody, help you guys out.
Yeah, hey, thanks. It's funny, I popped on the Microsoft website at the beginning of your presentation, and in classic Microsoft fashion, it's almost like reading Greek.
Oh yeah, it's so ridiculous. Yeah, which is the reason I created this, because it's like there's no normal way to navigate it, and I've yet to see a Microsoft document which actually just like click here, click here. I mean, I feel it's like they want to offer it, but not actually provide you a way to actually get the money. So.
Yeah,
Brian, do you administer this stuff yourself, or does someone else in your organization administer it?
There's really no administering of this. This is very set it and forget it. I'll look at it maybe once a month just to see if any other incentives has popped up. And then I added our marketing person so she could submit the co-op requests and send them the documentation, whatever else they needed. So for example, Microsoft's thing for that is they need like an invoice from us. So she worked with our accounting person, generate the invoice, upload it, and all the money flows through.
So that's the co-op. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you're going to schedule with another person and you want more tag-alongs at one time, please then email us all.
Yeah. For sure.
So Brian, the 60% rebate, you don't have to do anything except do the part that you were talking about. But the co-op, that's where you have to create that claim and then submit a receipt or something.
Yeah, the 60%, think of that sort of like the plumbing we're just getting set up, and then whenever they turn the water on, it flows straight through. And the claim is evidence-based, so you need to submit the request. But the nice thing, which I even didn't realize for the longest time, is that you didn't have to ask for permission for a particular activity. You just had to submit proof of the activity. And to be clear, our Google AdWords, we put it in here because I wanted the lowest hanging fruit to try and submit something. The Google AdWords don't even say Microsoft. The Google AdWords just are like cloud security, network security. It's that basic sort of stuff.
And I'm assuming there's some sort of document or list of what are valid activities.
I believe there is. I am not the one who filled out that part of the document. But what I told our marketing person is I was like, let's just start with this. And if they come back and reject it, then we can ask them what they want. But I was like, let's just start with low hanging fruit, and then we got to change it up. We'll change it up.
Okay. Thanks. Big help.
For sure.
Just out of curiosity, is like the co-op amount of money you got, you said it paid for Google AdWords? At what level per month? Do you know?
Well, yeah, I got back whatever was on the other screenshot. I think it's like 6,600 is what currently was in there.
Okay. So you can use all of that 6,600 to buy as many Google AdWords as you want.
As many Google AdWords as I want. And so basically, because we spent the cash, that just means there's $6,600 either to dedicate to other marketing expenses or to drop to the bottom line.
And just so I know, is this like new this year, or what's the significance?
No, they
people don't do the paperwork.
The co-op part of it versus just giving you commissions and like cash rebates. That part of it kicked in maybe a year ago. So that's the newer part.
Yep. And that's new. Okay. So that seems helpful. So now we're getting to be where we want to wrap up. So my suggestion would be today that we wrap up at 4 o'clock my time, which would be 5 o'clock your time. And let's vote as a group. I would suggest we go from like 9 o'clock to 12 tomorrow. Is that okay at my time? Is that still okay with people?
Fine with me.
Okay. Fine. Then what we'll do in the morning, we will vote on, there's the things I want to definitely cover are the co-managed working group. I want to have Ryan talk a little bit about what they do in terms of client account management and to develop client account manager. Then we can decide on the parking list how else we want to spend the time between 9 and 12. And then last thing we want to do is figure out where and when we want to have the next meeting like this. And so why don't we just plan from 9 to 12 tomorrow and go from there?
Can I ask just for the group? I mean, I know we've done a lot of account management presentations. Is there more appetite for the like sales comp discussion? I haven't built the slide deck yet, but is it really
There is. I would love, I think a good sales plan drives results, like a really good comp plan, and I'd like to definitely dive into that more.
I'd like to do them both if you don't mind. Because what you actually
I
did.
serve at the pleasure of you, Michael. Whatever you want.
There you go. So your daughter there can help you out on it.
Yeah.
But what you did last time in terms of just going through, you know what you talked about, but like literally just those 6 or 8 bullet points that you went through.
Yeah.
And two is the other thing that'd be helpful for me, and I think for the group, is like, how do we develop our CAMs? Like you said, you had that, I don't know if it's 6 months or 6 weeks, I forget what it is. But you had some kind of well thought out process about what they need to know and how to train them and all that. Those 2 things would be helpful for me.
Okay.
Honestly, the sales comp stuff, and when you say sales comp, you're talking mostly about CAMs, right?
No, I'm talking about BDEs.
No, I think you're talking about something different, which is how much you got to pay to get a good BDE, right?
Yeah, and then how do you structure that?
Yeah, that's different than I was talking about.
That's what I think we want to talk about as the second thing. And I think it just fits in the category of committing to just hiring
I've spent time
people.
with Doug, Brian, and I have had this conversation. Like everyone's tried to hire salespeople. A lot of people have had it not work.
Yeah.
I just wanted to I thought it would be interesting to solicit feedback.
Yeah. No, I follow you. I think we just do both.
Okay.
I think together it'd be like an hour. Is that a different kid? Jesus.
Yeah, this is my son, my daughter's.
Hey, Ryan, is he going to be the next superstar?
I don't know. He's playing video games.
Yeah, your kids are cute, brother.
Next Cam.
Oh, thanks.
No, seriously, Ryan, as you went through the last one was just kind of almost like off the top of your head. So really just those 6 or 8 points you hit in.
Can you send me the recording so I can remember what I said?
Yeah, no, you'll remember. And then I'll remember if you don't. Okay. And then the talking about the comp thing would be great. And then then we can figure out what else we want to talk about for that. I do want to cover co-managed in a way about what it will do together to pull that off.